Bible says throughout, I'm just going to give you one verse. Paul writes to the Hebrew believers and he says, without shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. So when Jesus says it is finished, he's saying it's paid in full. Well, verses 44 and 45, it says, now it was about the 6th hour, highlight that, and darkness fell over the whole land until the 9th hour, because the sun was obscured and the veil of the temple was torn in two. So you want to write down the 6th hour is noon. It's noon. And the 9th hour is 3 p.m. Jesus is crucified at 9 a.m. At noon, the 6th hour, darkness comes over the earth. And that lasts till 3 p.m. in the afternoon. This is not an eclipse. The Passover always took place on a full moon, so there would not be an eclipse. This is a supernatural darkness, and it's commonly held that here the sin of the world is coming upon Jesus as he is paying the price for all the things that we've ever done. So much so, Paul would describe it like this a couple decades later. Paul says to the church in Corinth, he says, God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. He took our sin. Now we are the righteousness of God. We're good with God. Well, verse 45, again, let me read that. Because the sun was obscured and the veil of the temple was torn in two. So you have this from noon to 3 p.m., you have this unexplainable darkness. And then we're told that the veil of the temple was torn in two. That would be the veil that would be, there was a room in the temple, it's called the Holy of Holies. And once a year, and only once a year, the high priest would go behind the veil and he would do the ceremony to make atonement for the sins of the people. There's only the high priest could do this, and only once a year. And so what he would do is, if you were to go into that area called the Holy of Holies, behind the veil, and there was any sin, they believed that you would be killed because of the holiness of God. So you had to deal with any sin. So before they would go in once a year, they would tie a rope around the high priest, and then he would go behind the veil of the temple into the Holy of Holies, and he would have bells, and he would keep ringing the bells, because they believed that if he died, God would kill him. The bells would, they'd stop ringing, and they realized that if he died, none of the other priests could go behind the veil, so they weren't going to go in there to bring him out, so they had a rope attached to him, so they would drag him out on the other. Now, it's not recorded that anybody had ever died going in there, but that's what they believe. The veil was over 4 inches thick. Now, and it represented the separation between God and man. So Matthew's gospel tells it, and I didn't put it on your outline, that the veil was torn from the top to the bottom. It's like as if God from the top just rips it open. And it's God's way of saying, as Jesus has paid the price for the sins, that come on in. There's no more barrier between us. You can just come right into God now. Verse 46, it says, and Jesus, crying out with a loud voice, said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And having said this, he breathed his last. This is going to be at 3 p.m. Now, John's gospel says it slightly different. I've taken this from the Living Bible, and it says, he said, it is finished. And the word there is teleo, and bowed his head and dismissed his spirit. It translates into English as it is finished. The whole word is tetelestai. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, which just means paid in full. So the word finished there, I put it on your outline, teleo, means complete, conclude, discharge a debt, or to pay. The idea is when Jesus yells out, it is finished, what he's actually saying is paid in full, paid in full, I paid it in full. So the question is, why did Jesus have to die in the first place? Well, every one of us have sinned against God. We've done some things. We've all sinned. And throughout, I'm just going to give you one verse. Paul writes to the Hebrew believers and he says, without shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. So when Jesus says it is finished, he's saying it's paid in full. So here's the story. God looked down and saw the things that you and I had done, and he loved us so much. He said, but somebody's got to pay for those things that you've done. But God said, I can't bear to see you pay the price for everything that you've done. So God says, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come to the earth as a man. I'm going to live a perfect life, and then I'm going to step into your place, and I'm going to pay that price, that horrific death, so that when I pay that, you're able to go free. Remember, we talked about Barabbas, the son of the Father, went free because the Son of God took his place. So God said, I can't bear to see you that, so I'm going to do that for you. The other part of that verse I love, it says he dismissed his spirit. And when you think about Jesus at this point, think of the beatings, the floggings, the dehydration, the bleeding, the exhaustion. If it was, Jesus should have been dead hours ago. Any of us would have been dead long before this. But Jesus, he's fully man, but he's also fully God. And the truth is, you can't kill God. So the way that Jesus dies is when he pays the full price, he dismisses his spirit. I love that.